Today, we are diving deep into a really confusing and honestly pretty powerful dynamic called the warm-cold operator. We're going to explore how our own biology, our own brains, can get hooked on a pattern of inconsistency that is just devastating. It turns what feels like affection into a weapon against our own peace of mind. And this pattern, it can show up absolutely anywhere, in romance, at work, even in our closest friendships, and it almost always leaves you feeling disoriented, anxious, and just questioning your own reality. The most striking truth about the warm-cold operator is that the cold phase isn't the primary weapon. The warmth is. We generally assume that manipulation looks like constant hostility, but in high-pressure dynamics, your own biological drive for connection and validation is used to turn a radiant, loving presence into a psychological hook that makes the subsequent silence feel like a death sentence. Why do you find yourself begging for the good version of a person who is currently treating you like a stranger? This is the core paradox of thermal oscillation. The moment your desire for love is turned into the mechanism of your own psychological capture.
It's just such a baffling and painful experience, isn't it? You know deep down something feels off, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. And this creates this cognitive dissonance where your logical mind is basically at war with your emotional reality. You start asking yourself all these questions. Am I going crazy? Am I just too sensitive? What did I do wrong? So how on earth does this process manage to bypass our rational mind and hook us so effectively in all kinds of relationships? Well, let's break it down.
Okay, so first step, the paradox of warmth. It's time to name the vertigo. And that word, vertigo, is so key here. It's that disorienting, dizzying feeling you get when your emotional ground is just constantly shifting underneath you. The very first step to getting your balance back is to go from this confusing feeling to a concrete diagnosis. It's all about building a vocabulary for what you're experiencing, because once you can name something, you can finally start to understand it.
The clinical term for this pattern is affective throttling. Now, think of a throttle on an engine, right? It controls the flow of fuel. Well, in this case, what's being throttled is the flow of affection, approval, and validation. It's this documented cognitive shift that's caused by a cycle of really intense affection, followed by a sudden, jarring withdrawal. And this is not just about romance. It could be a boss who idolizes you one week, you're the star performer, and then the next week completely ignores you in meetings. Or it could be a friend who pulls you in super close, you share everything, and then they just vanish. It leaves you in this constant state of confusion, always wondering what you did to cause that shift. So the end goal of this cycle, whether it's intended or not, is something called regulatory dependency. See, normally we regulate our own emotions. If we have a bad day, we find ways to soothe ourselves. Good day, we enjoy it from our own stable core. But regulatory dependency, that's when you outsource that job. Your emotional stability, your sense of just feeling okay, becomes totally reliant on someone else's approval and presence. You go from being in charge of your own emotional state to what the source material calls a managed subject, constantly focused on just one thing, getting that warmth back.
And this dependency creates a state of thermal vertigo. The term vertigo is used because people literally report a feeling of physical instability, of being constantly on edge, almost like the room is tilting. Your brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, just goes into complete overdrive. You become hypervigilant, you start scanning their face for tiny micro-expressions, analyzing the tone of a text message, just desperate for any clue that might help you predict whether you're about to be embraced or totally frozen out. It is the definition of walking on emotional eggshells 24/7, and it is physically and mentally exhausting.
Okay, next section, the three-phase trap. So how is this vertigo actually manufactured? When you're in it, it can feel so chaotic and random, but there's often a hidden structure. It's a predictable, repeatable, and deeply effective system based on something psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, which, by the way, is the most powerful way to ingrain any behavior. Understanding the mechanics of this trap is the first step toward disarming it. The source material breaks it down into this three-phase cycle you see right here. It all starts with the radiant phase. And this isn't just someone being nice, it's over-the-top validation, intense mirroring, creating this peak experience where you feel uniquely seen. Then comes the sudden frost. This is the silent pivot, where communication and affection are just abruptly withdrawn. That silence creates a vacuum, and your brain rushes to fill it with anxiety and self-blame, constantly asking, "What did I do?" And finally, and this is the most crucial part, there's the thaw reconciliation. Only after you show desperation, chasing, apologizing, pleading, is the warmth restored. This floods your brain with relief chemicals like dopamine, and it creates a powerful high that feels like connection.
but is actually the hook of addiction being set even deeper.
This quote, "I felt higher than I've ever felt," man, that just captures the power of that radiant phase perfectly. Notice the language. It's the language of a peak experience, of addiction. The initial high is engineered to be so intoxicating that when it's gone, it doesn't just feel bad, it feels like a full-blown crisis. You're not just missing a person, your brain is physically craving a chemical state it was given, and you become desperate to do anything to get it back.
Now, over time, this cycle creates what's known as the anxious ambivalent effect. Your brain's priority list literally gets rewritten. The primary mission, overriding almost everything else, becomes one thing: get the warmth back. As a result, you literally stop noticing red flags or the other person's flaws. Your brain just explains them away because acknowledging them would conflict with that primary mission. This is how you start to misinterpret these incredibly painful cycles as passion, and you start to see normal, stable consistency in other relationships as boring or lacking that connection. The roller coaster starts to feel like love.
All right, section 3, the psychology of submission. So we've seen the what and the how, but the most difficult question is always why. Why do we stay in the cage? Why is this pattern so incredibly hard to break, even when we know on some level that it's hurting us? This part moves from the external tactics to the internal psychology that keeps us completely hooked.
This slide illustrates the fundamental power shift so brilliantly. I mean, most of us start out with autonomous emotionality. Our sense of self is stable, our mood is our own. But this cycle leads to external regulation, where you need their approval just to feel okay. Your emotions are no longer your own. They're being managed by their behavior. You wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is check your phone, not to see the news, but to gauge their mood, because you know their mood is about to become your mood for the day.
This whole dynamic exploits some really core psychological drivers on both sides. For the controller, it offers a path to effortless control by basically owning your emotional thermostat. For the target, it triggers two powerful primal instincts. First, you've got the scarcity principle. Just like in economics, when a resource, in this case warmth and validation, is made scarce, its perceived value just skyrockets and our brain panics to get it. And second, it hijacks our deep human need for relational permanence. We are wired to form bonds and to fight to maintain them. This dynamic turns that healthy survival instinct completely against us, making us feel like saving the relationship is way more important than saving ourselves.
So section 4, reclaiming your thermostat. We understand the mechanism now, so how do we build a defense? The key insight here is that it's not about fighting back or trying to change the other person. It's about reclaiming your own internal world, and it all starts with recognition. The goal is to move from that feeling of vertigo to a state of what's called affective integrity, where your feelings are once again your own. It's all about taking back control of your own emotional thermostat.
The source suggests two really powerful internal steps. First, conduct an inconsistency audit. Get out a piece of paper and just be an objective accountant of the relationship. And don't log their words or their promises or their potential. Log their actions. What is the data telling you? Is this consistent affection, or is it an unpredictable system of reward and punishment? Just seeing the pattern in black and white can be a shocking moment of clarity. Second, develop internal thermostat awareness. So when that cold phase hits, your instinct is to chase. Instead, just for a moment, stop and observe. Notice the anxiety in your body. Name it. This is my brain reacting to withdrawal. By observing it instead of immediately acting on it, you create a little bit of space. And in that space, you can choose to turn toward your own life instead of chasing them.
And this part is it's so vital to understand. The anxiety you feel in these dynamics is not a flaw in your character, it is not a weakness, it is a perfectly healthy biological alarm system correctly identifying that you are in a socially engineered destabilizing environment. Your feelings are not the problem, they are valid signals pointing to the problem. Think of it this way, your anxiety is a smoke detector, and it's going off because it's detecting smoke. Don't get angry at the alarm, pay attention to the fire. And this all leads to the one core realization that finally breaks the spell. It's not a statement you have to say out loud to them. It's a quiet, internal declaration of independence. The moment you can genuinely say to yourself, I don't need your warmth to be okay, you interrupt the entire neurochemical cycle of dependency. You decouple your well-being from their behavior. And that is the beginning of reclaiming your autonomy.
Ultimately, the path out of this is to stop looking to someone else as the keeper of the light, as the source of all warmth. It's about a fundamental shift in your orientation. Stop chasing the light. Be your own sun. A sun doesn't need to chase warmth, right? It generates it from its own core. And this means actively investing in your own life, your own friendships, your hobbies, your goals, so that you have multiple, stable sources of your own light and heat.
And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway. After all the complexity, the highs and the lows, the confusion, the vertigo, the rule for reclaiming your peace is beautifully simple. Consistency is the only metric of safety. It's the compass that will always point you back to solid ground.